pay and benefits. West Virginia teachers who went on a 9-day walkout last year ended another 2-day strike this week after Republican Governor Jim Justice promised to veto a bill that would have increased school choice and accountability. We're back with Dan Henninger, Alicia Finley, and Jillian Melcher. So, Jillian, what's really behind this spate of strikes?
Remarkably, not so much salary, although that's secondary. I think many of these teachers' unions are striking because they don't want the competition from charter schools, first off. And second, they don't like their pay being linked to performance. And I think we're seeing a big push for them to use strikes as a way to coerce the government into protecting their position.
When you say pay for performance, you mean student performance in particular.
Exactly.
Graduation rates, mastery of the NAEP tests, the national tests for reading and math. That's what you're talking about?
Yeah.
They want seniority to determine pay.
Yeah, they want seniority. So in West Virginia, you have them saying that you actually can't consider anything but seniority for layoffs. In Denver, a big sticking point was whether or not you'd give bonuses for better student performance. So yeah, I think these teachers' unions, end of the day, they want to be protected. They want to know that they're going to get the union perks and not have the competition.
And on the issue of performance is poor. I mean, scores on tests in most of these districts is below anything that's acceptable. Parents realize this, inner city parents, and so many of them are migrating to charter schools to get their kids out of these public schools, and the unions are becoming desperate about losing their franchise.
Well, but Alicia, is this working?
Well, that's why they keep doing it. It worked last year in Arizona, Oklahoma, West Virginia. They got pay raises.
Big pay raises.
And then every time in LA, they got somewhat of a pay raise, but the problem is the school reformers are not going on offense, and they are not actually strongly advocating for these reforms because they've become a little timid in the Trump era because the unions have managed to create this narrative that these are for-profit charter schools promoted by Betsy DeVos, and they're scaring a lot of liberal school reformers.
Betsy DeVos being the education secretary, but charter schools are not for-profit.
That's right, they are non-profit
public schools.
Right,
they just get money, and most of them actually get less money from per student than traditional public schools.
That's right. Well, the unions think that anything that isn't run by the government is for profit, and they've managed also to vilify the backers of charter schools, which usually are wealthy philanthropists.
Well, in West Virginia, that's not a left-leaning state anymore. It's big voted for Trump. Jim Justice, Republican governor, used to be Democrat, changed to Republican. I think the Republicans were moving this reform bill, and yet he came out, almost before they went on strike, to surrender essentially and say, I'll veto the bill. So why in a state that's right-leaning and, as Dan says, underperforming, would he capitulate so quickly?
I mean, I think that's the question for him. For sure, West Virginia has a strong labor presence. But yeah, what he's done is essentially give the teachers' union a veto over legislation. It's a huge surrender, I think. And I would like to see the school choice advocates be a little bit more forceful, because at the end of the day, you've got these teachers going on strike claiming it's about the children, and that's hogwash. If you look at how these schools are performing, it does an enormous disservice, particularly to the most vulnerable students, not to give them more options.
Well, and this is not universal across the country, Dan, because we have the example of Florida, which has a very expansive school choice program, and which Ron DeSantis, the current governor, used to his advantage politically. There's some polling that suggests that was a big advantage for him in the last election.
Good point. And he ran with President Trump's support, for sure. I wish, Paul, that President Trump would do more on this issue than he has, not just the reformers, but he embraced school choice and charters in the campaign. He hasn't really done it as president. I think it would be a big political win for him if he got behind some of these charter schools and school choice movements, because it is about inner city, black voters in the inner city who are looking for alternatives, and I think the president would do himself a favor if he got behind.
Well, and this retreat by the Democrats on school choice, on accountability, is a retreat from Democratic policies, right? I mean, Bill Clinton was in favor of charter schools. Barack Obama was in favor of charter schools. They were not against testing students for performance.
No, I think that's right. I wouldn't necessarily say there's a retreat. I think they basically do not want to go to war with the unions. And so in LA, what you saw is Austin Buettner, who is a quote unquote school reformer, he really was kind of milquetoast on this issue. He really didn't make the case for why charters are good. He rather said, public school charters are just do not receive enough funding. We need to just fund public schools better, and everything will be fine.
Yeah, they just don't want to have to jeopardize the future of their careers because the unions will take them on. But somebody has to do that in the Democratic Party. When we come back, Chicago.